The galaxy of Warhammer 40,000 is a sprawling tapestry of mysteries, contradictions, and ancient remnants of unimaginable power. Among these enigmas, few inspire as much speculation and fear as the ancient warp gates scattered across countless worlds. These colossal structures, often mistaken for natural formations or ruins of forgotten civilizations, are silent witnesses to a time when the galaxy was shaped by forces far beyond the comprehension of its current inhabitants. They are relics of an age so distant that even the oldest records of the Eldar offer only fragments of their true purpose and origin. These gates are not mere curiosities. They are conduits to the warp, the immaterium that flows beneath the physical realm. This parallel dimension, home to both psychic energy and unspeakable horrors, is as much a danger as it is a source of power. The warp gates offer a glimpse into this volatile domain, serving as bridges between the material and immaterial worlds. Yet their purpose extends beyond transportation or communication. Their presence suggests an intricate network spanning the galaxy, created with precision and intent by beings whose ambitions and capabilities rival those of the gods. For millennia, the warp gates have been the focal point of legends and speculation. They have influenced the rise and fall of empires, the course of wars, and the survival of entire species. Across the galaxy, these gates lie dormant, their secrets buried beneath layers of history, myth, and obfuscation. Yet, even in their silence, they radiate an aura of unease. To approach a gate is to feel the weight of ages, to sense the echoes of long-forgotten purposes. The knowledge of their existence is not universal. To some, they are sacred relics, remnants of divine intervention. To others, they are forbidden zones, sources of corruption and chaos. Scholars, soldiers, and scavengers alike have sought to unlock their secrets, often paying the ultimate price. The very act of studying these gates can attract the malevolent attentions of the warp itself, as well as the ire of those who consider such knowledge too dangerous to pursue. Understanding the warp gates requires navigating a labyrinth of lore, each piece of evidence raising more questions than answers. Who built these gateways? For what purpose? And why were they abandoned, or were they ever truly meant to be? To grasp even a fraction of their significance is to delve into the very fabric of the galaxy's ancient history, where myths and truths are indistinguishable. This is the story of the ancient warp gates, their origins shrouded in mystery, their role in the galaxy's great drama uncertain. It is a tale of ambition, ingenuity, and catastrophe, a legacy that continues to shape the galaxy in ways that few fully comprehend. As we journey into the depths of this mystery, we shall uncover the truths and contradictions that define these enigmatic constructs and explore their implications for the galaxy's fragile balance. The ancient warp gates stand as testaments to a forgotten age, crafted by forces whose reach extended far beyond the stars visible today. At the heart of their creation lie key factions and individuals, each representing a fragment of the vast and intricate puzzle of the gate's existence. These participants, ranging from celestial architects to opportunistic interlopers, played distinct roles in the origins, discovery, and manipulation of the gates. The most central figure in their creation is the Aldari, an ancient and technologically advanced species whose influence shaped vast stretches of the galaxy long before the rise of humanity. Their mastery of psychic energy and deep connection to the warp allowed them to manipulate its chaotic currents, creating stable pathways between distant points in the galaxy. The gates are believed to be part of their webway, an intricate labyrinth of interdimensional corridors used to bypass the perils of direct warp travel. Whether the Aldari constructed all the gates or merely inherited some from an even older civilization remains a matter of contention, even among their own scholars. Yet the Aldari were not alone in their connection to the gates. The enigmatic Old Ones, a race shrouded in the mists of prehistory, are often credited as the original architects of these structures. The Old Ones possessed knowledge of the warp that surpassed even the Aeldari. Their creations were not merely functional but artistic, each gate a masterpiece imbued with purpose and intention. These beings used the gates to facilitate their vast networks of control and influence across the galaxy, connecting worlds and species in a web of interdependence. For the Old Ones, the gates were tools of unity and expansion, binding the galaxy together in their vision of order. As the dominance of the Old Ones waned, another faction emerged to challenge the balance of power: the Necrons. A relentless mechanical race driven by cold logic and a hatred of their former masters, the Necrons and their overlords, the Citan, sought to unravel the fabric of the warp itself. While the Necrons had little use for the gates in their original function, their attempts to neutralize the Old Ones and the Aeldari often intersected with the manipulation or destruction of these constructs. Their technology, rooted in physicality rather than psychic energy, represented a stark contrast to the principles behind the gate's design, yet their actions would forever alter their fate. Humanity, though a latecomer to the galactic stage, also became entangled in the saga of the warp gates. During the Dark Age of technology, humans rediscovered and experimented with many such structures, often without fully understanding their origins or dangers. Rogue traders, researchers, and even military forces sought to harness the power of the gates for conquest or exploration, frequently with disastrous results. The remnants of these endeavors can still be found in the ruins of ancient human settlements, their fates sealed by the volatile forces they attempted to control. The warp itself must also be considered an active participant in this tale. As the Immaterium courses through the gates, it influences their behavior and stability. The Chaos Gods, manifestations of the warp's most destructive and predatory aspects, view the gates with a mixture of contempt and desire. While they prefer the uncontrolled maelstrom of the warp, the gates represent potential footholds in the material universe, a means to corrupt and conquer through more precise interventions. Their influence has twisted many of these structures into instruments of chaos, their original purposes obscured by millennia of desecration. Finally, scattered throughout the galaxy are smaller factions and independent players whose roles, though less grand, are no less significant. Explorers and scavengers of all species have stumbled upon these gates, often driven by greed or desperation. Some see them as tools of salvation, others as keys to unimaginable power. Many have perished, their curiosity or ambition leading them to awaken forces they could not comprehend. The interplay of these forces, builders, destroyers, and seekers alike, has shaped the story of the warp gates across countless millennia. Their roles in this vast narrative provide the foundation for understanding the gates themselves, revealing a tapestry of intention, conflict, and mystery woven into the galaxy's history. The discovery of the ancient warp gates is an event steeped in both curiosity and dread. These enigmatic constructs first came to light during the earliest explorations of the galaxy, long before humanity rose to prominence. The Old Ones, masters of the galaxy during its primordial age, were the first to harness and create these gateways. Their purpose was to bind together their expansive empire and connect the countless species they had uplifted. However, as eons passed and their influence waned, the gates fell into disuse, becoming relics of a forgotten age. The rediscovery of these gates by other civilizations was far from simultaneous or uniform. The Aeldari, with their deep psychic attunement and ancient lore, were among the first to stumble upon the gates in the aftermath of the Old Ones' decline. Their scholars and mystics recognized the gates as remnants of their precursors' grand designs. For the Aeldari, the gates were a natural extension of the webway, and they sought to integrate them into their own intricate network of interdimensional pathways. This effort, while successful in some instances, was fraught with danger, as the gates were not created for the Aeldari and bore marks of their original, more complex intent. Humanity's first encounters with the gates occurred much later, during the height of the Dark Age of technology. As human explorers expanded into the stars, they encountered the remnants of countless ancient civilizations, including the Aldari and Necrons. The warp gates, initially mistaken for natural formations or ruins of primitive cultures, soon became subjects of intense study. Early researchers theorized that the gates could provide unprecedented access to distant parts of the galaxy, bypassing the dangers of traditional warp travel. This belief led to a surge of experimentation as humanity sought to harness the gates for their own purposes. The initial reaction to the gates was a mixture of awe and trepidation. On the one hand, they represented a potential breakthrough in interstellar travel, a means to overcome the limitations of even the most advanced technology of the era. On the other hand, their connection to the warp, a realm known for its instability and malevolence, posed a significant risk. Early attempts to activate the gates often ended in catastrophe, with entire exploratory teams vanishing or succumbing to the horrors unleashed from the Immaterium. These failures did little to dissuade further investigation, as the lure of their potential outweighed the immediate dangers. The discovery of functioning gates caused a ripple effect among the fledgling human colonies. Some saw the gates as tools for rapid expansion and conquest, while others viewed them with suspicion, associating their activation with outbreaks of psychic phenomena and warp-based anomalies. Certain colonies forbade any interaction with the gates, while others, desperate for resources or driven by ambition, sought to exploit them despite the risks. Among the Aldari, the rediscovery of ancient gates sparked an internal debate. Some factions argued for their preservation, seeing them as sacred remnants of their shared history with the old ones. Others sought to adapt the gates to reinforce the crumbling webway, hoping to stave off the growing predations of chaos. This divergence of opinion would later play a role in the fragmentation of Aldari society, with different groups pursuing conflicting goals. The reaction of the Necrons to the gates was starkly different. Having no use for the warp and seeing the gates as a potential threat, they sought to destroy or neutralize these constructs whenever they were encountered. Necron tomb worlds, awakening from their long slumber, targeted the gates with advanced weaponry, reducing many to inert ruins. This conflict, though rarely direct, placed the Necrons at odds with the Aldari and humanity, further complicating the delicate balance of power in the galaxy. The scattered and often incomplete understanding of the gate's purpose led to countless theories, myths, and misconceptions. Some believe the gates were divine artifacts placed by gods to test the faithful. Others viewed them as traps laid by malevolent forces to ensnare the unwary. Over time, the gates became symbols of both hope and fear, embodying the duality of progress and peril inherent in the exploration of the unknown. The combination of reverence, curiosity, and recklessness that characterized these early encounters laid the groundwork for the events that would follow. The warp gates, once silent and forgotten, became focal points of galactic intrigue, their secrets drawing in all who sought to uncover the mysteries of the universe. In their shadow, alliances were forged, conflicts ignited, and destinies rewritten, setting the stage for a saga that continues to shape the galaxy's history. The history of the ancient warp gates unfolds in stages, each marked by new revelations, conflicts, and escalating consequences. Their existence, once obscured by time, gradually emerged as an undeniable reality, weaving a complex narrative of discovery, experimentation, and unintended outcomes. The earliest stage of this saga began with fragmented encounters and observations. As different factions stumbled upon the gates, their understanding of these structures was primitive at best. Initial discoveries often led to speculation rather than certainty. Among the Aldari, the gates were initially regarded as relics of their own distant past or creations of the old ones. Efforts to explore and integrate these gateways into their own webway were sporadic and cautious, hindered by the volatile nature of the gates and the dangers associated with accessing them. For humanity, the development of the gates story took on a different character during the dark age of technology. At this stage, A technological boom enabled humanity to explore and study the gates with greater intensity. Early experiments led to small-scale successes, such as stabilizing minor gates for limited transportation. However, these breakthroughs were often accompanied by catastrophic failures. Entire research stations were lost to warp incursions, and the gates began to acquire a reputation as both a boon and a bane. As the Age of Strife dawned, the warp gates took on an even more sinister dimension. The increase in warp storms and psychic disturbances rendered many gates unstable, turning them into dangerous anomalies rather than usable tools. This period marked a significant regression in the understanding of the gates. Records from this time describe planets consumed by warp incursions triggered by malfunctioning gates, with local populations often blaming their misfortune on divine punishment or malevolent spirits. The Imperium of Man, during its Great Crusade, approached the warp gates with both ambition and caution. Exploratory fleets encountered numerous gates across the galaxy, but the Imperium's perspective was shaped by its staunch distrust of the warp. Initial efforts to study or exploit the gates were heavily regulated, often involving both the Adeptus Mechanicus and psychic specialists from the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. These groups brought different goals to their investigations, one seeking technological insight, the other wary of the psychic threats the gates posed. Their findings revealed that the gates were not monolithic in design. Some were massive interstellar portals, while others were smaller and appeared to serve localized functions. A key milestone in the narrative occurred during the Horus Heresy, when the warp gates became tools of both strategic significance and devastating consequence. Certain gates were manipulated by factions aligned with chaos, transforming them into conduits for warp-based invasions. This not only shifted the gates' role from passive relics to active weapons, but also highlighted their susceptibility to corruption. For the Imperium, this period underscored the necessity of controlling or destroying the gates, even at great cost. In the millennia that followed, the exploration and understanding of the warp gates entered a phase of stagnation and mythologization. The gates, now scattered across the galaxy in varying states of function, became focal points for local legends and superstitions. Many were abandoned, deemed too dangerous to interact with. However, some were guarded as relics or potential weapons, their secrets locked away by edicts of the Ecclesiarchy or the Mechanicus. The Aeldari continued their attempts to reclaim or safeguard certain gates, particularly those connected to the webway. These efforts were complicated by the fragmentation of their civilization and the encroachment of chaos. Among the Drukhari, some gates became tools for raiding operations, while the craft world Aeldari often sought to seal or restore them. The struggle for control over these gateways further divided an already splintered race. In more recent times, rediscovery and renewed interest in the gates have reignited the cycle of exploration and peril. Rogue traders, Xenos factions, and even Chaos warbands have sought to harness the gates for their own purposes. Each new interaction brings fresh insights, but also introduces greater risks. Among the most concerning developments are reports of gates awakening or activating seemingly of their own accord, as if responding to some unknown trigger or force. This continuous evolution of the warp gate story illustrates their dual nature as both artifacts of immense potential and sources of unparalleled danger. With each new stage of development, the galaxy edges closer to unraveling their secrets, though at a cost that few are willing to bear. The gates remain a tantalizing mystery, one that refuses to be fully understood, their story far from its conclusion. The pivotal moment in the saga of the ancient warp gates occurred when one of the most intact and mysterious gates, hidden deep within a remote sector of the galaxy, was inadvertently activated during an exploratory expedition. This event, often referred to as the Cryus Rift incident, revealed not only the immense power of the gates, but also the deeper, more sinister secrets they harbored. The activation of the gate did not merely create a stable passage, but also unleashed a cascade of events that would reshape the understanding of these constructs forever. The expedition was led by a coalition of the Adeptus Mechanicus and a minor rogue trader dynasty, drawn to the region by persistent but cryptic signals emanating from an uncharted system. The gate itself was discovered buried beneath layers of volcanic rock and crystalline formations, suggesting it had been deliberately hidden or shielded from detection. Its design was unlike any previously documented, with intricate carvings and glyphs that seemed to shimmer and shift under scrutiny. Initial scans suggested the gate had been dormant for millennia, but residual energy readings indicated it was far from inert. The decision to activate the gate was driven by equal parts curiosity and hubris. The Mechanicus team, fascinated by the possibilities of reverse engineering its technology, devised a plan to supply power through a combination of plasma reactors and psychic amplification. Despite warnings from a handful of psychers on the team who sensed a foreboding presence, the activation sequence proceeded. As the gate roared to life, its shimmering surface began to ripple like liquid silver, and the air around it vibrated with an almost unbearable resonance. The true purpose of the gate became evident only after its activation. Unlike other known warp gates, which primarily served as transportation hubs or localized conduits, this gate appeared to be a massive data repository or relay station capable of interfacing with an ancient and incomprehensibly vast network. As the Mechanicus attempted to decode its functions, streams of encoded information began pouring through the gate, overwhelming their systems. The data contained fragments of star charts, technological schematics, and cryptic records of long-lost events, some predating even the rise of the Old Ones. Among the revelations extracted was a critical secret. The gates were not solely designed for interstellar travel or communication. Embedded within their structure was a fail-safe mechanism tied to the warp itself. This mechanism, once triggered, could manipulate the warp in ways that defied known physics, including stabilizing unstable regions or, conversely, amplifying warp storms to catastrophic levels. This discovery suggested the gates were not merely tools of expansion, but weapons of unimaginable destructive potential. As the Mechanicus continued their analysis, a more chilling truth emerged. The gate's activation seemed to have attracted the attention of an external force, an ancient and malevolent consciousness residing deep within the warp. The Psychers began experiencing visions of an immense, shadowy presence observing them through the gate, its intentions unclear but unmistakably hostile. As these visions grew more vivid, strange phenomena began manifesting around the gate: equipment malfunctions, hallucinations among the crew, and inexplicable warp rifts appearing across the system. The final revelation came when the gate itself began to change. Its shimmering surface darkened, and the glyphs adorning its frame shifted, forming a pattern that none could decipher, but all instinctively feared. Data streams reversed, spilling corrupted and incomplete fragments that hinted at long-dead civilizations and apocalyptic events. It became clear that the gate was no longer a passive structure. It had become a conduit for something far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. In a desperate bid to prevent further catastrophe, the Mechanicus initiated a shutdown sequence, severing power to the gate. However, this only partially succeeded. The gate's activation had triggered a chain reaction, linking it to other dormant gates across the galaxy. Reports of sudden energy surges and localized warp disturbances began flooding in from distant sectors, suggesting that the Cryus Rift Gate was part of a much larger interconnected system that could no longer be controlled. The incident left more questions than answers. What intelligence or force had designed the fail-safe mechanism within the gates? Was the malevolent presence an unintended consequence of their activation, or had it been waiting for this moment? And most critically, what was the ultimate purpose of the gate's hidden network? The Cryus Rift incident marked a turning point, transforming the gates from objects of curiosity into symbols of both hope and terror. Their secrets, once thought to be the key to progress, now seemed more likely to herald destruction. The secrets of the ancient warp gates have an immediate and profound impact on the fragile balance of power within the galaxy. The revelation of their true capabilities, transportation, communication, and potentially cataclysmic manipulation of the warp introduces both opportunities and existential threats. As more of these gates are uncovered and their secrets explored, their influence begins to ripple outward, affecting every major faction and countless unaligned worlds. The first and most direct consequence of opening a gate is the destabilization of local warp space. Even dormant gates emit faint ripples into the immaterium, but activation amplifies these disturbances exponentially. Warp storms, already volatile phenomena, become unpredictable in regions where gates are tampered with. Trade routes, military campaigns, and even planetary communications are disrupted as ships are lost or forced to take longer, more dangerous paths to avoid the growing instability. These disruptions have cascading effects, crippling economies, stranding isolated colonies, and weakening defensive positions against both internal and external threats. For the Imperium of Man, the discovery of functional gates creates a paradox. On one hand, the gates present an opportunity to bypass the reliance on the warp for faster-than-light travel, potentially mitigating the dangers of chaos corruption. On the other hand, every activation risks drawing the attention of entities from the warp or triggering catastrophic events. This dichotomy fosters intense debate within the Imperium, with the Adeptus Mechanicus advocating for controlled experimentation and the Ecclesiarchy demanding outright destruction, viewing the gates as blasphemous relics of a time best forgotten. The secrets encoded within the gates also spark a new arms race. The schematics and data retrieved from activated gates reveal fragments of lost technologies and ancient knowledge, tempting factions to harness this information for their own gain. The Aldari, already fractured, are further divided between those who wish to seal the gates permanently and those who see their potential as a means to restore their crumbling civilization. Among the more opportunistic Drukhari, reports emerge of gates being used as tools for surprise raids, leveraging their interdimensional properties to strike deep into enemy territories without warning. The Chaos Gods and their servants view the gates as both a threat and an opportunity. While they disdain the gate's inherent stability, which contradicts the natural chaos of the warp, they recognize their value as points of entry into the material universe. Cults devoted to chaos begin to seek out dormant gates, aiming to corrupt or destabilize them to spread their influence further. Entire sectors fall to corruption as gate activations create breaches that unleash demonic incursions, devastating planets and forcing massive military responses. Xeno species also respond to the gate's rediscovery in diverse ways. The Necrons, ancient enemies of the warp and its influence, prioritize the neutralization or destruction of active gates wherever they are found. Their awakening tomb worlds dispatch fleets to target these sites, often clashing with human or Aldari forces in the process. Conversely, species like the Orcs approach the gates with reckless enthusiasm, driven by their instinctive desire for battle and destruction. The gates become arenas for brutal conflicts, their surroundings littered with the debris of endless skirmishes. Perhaps the most alarming consequence of opening these gates is the possibility of activating the dormant network they belong to. Evidence suggests that the gates are interconnected in ways that surpass even the most advanced contemporary understanding of the galaxy. The partial awakening of this network has already triggered anomalous events, such as synchronized energy surges and sudden reactivations of gates thought to be inert. If the network were fully awakened, it could reshape the galaxy's spatial dynamics, creating new routes of travel, but also unleashing unpredictable consequences on a galactic scale. On the local level, the presence of active gates often has devastating effects on nearby planets. The warp's influence seeps through even the most stable gateways, causing mutations, psychic phenomena, and outbreaks of madness among the population. Entire ecosystems are altered as warp energy infuses the environment, creating dangerous hybrid creatures or corrupting the natural order. Civilizations near these gates face existential dilemmas, whether to abandon their homes, attempt to seal the gates, or risk coexisting with their unpredictable presence. Ultimately, the secrets of the ancient warp gates act as a catalyst for both conflict and discovery. They intensify existing rivalries and introduce new dimensions to the galactic struggle for survival and dominance. While their promise of power is undeniable, the costs associated with their activation, both immediate and long-term, ensure that their presence remains a source of fear and fascination. Every attempt to uncover their secrets edges the galaxy closer to an unpredictable tipping point where the line between salvation and destruction grows ever thinner. The ancient warp gates are shrouded in layers of complexity, with their unique aspects fueling endless speculation and debate among those who study them. These constructs are not merely static relics, but dynamic entities whose purpose and function extend far beyond what is immediately apparent. Among the most intriguing and widely discussed aspects of the warp gates is their apparent ability to interact with both the physical and immaterial realms in ways that defy conventional understanding. One of the most debated features of the gates is their ability to generate localized zones of temporal distortion. In several documented cases, explorers have reported time behaving erratically near active gates. These distortions range from subtle anomalies, such as watches running at different speeds, to dramatic events, including entire teams aging decades within minutes or vanishing entirely, only to reappear centuries later with no memory of their absence. Theories suggest that the gate's connection to the warp, where time flows unpredictably, creates these anomalies, though no faction has been able to harness or predict them reliably. Another fascinating characteristic is the gate's apparent capacity for self-repair and adaptation. Despite their ancient origins and millennia of neglect, many gates display signs of regeneration when exposed to certain stimuli. Cracks in their surfaces mend themselves, and damaged glyphs realign into functional configurations. This ability raises questions about their construction materials and whether the gates possess a form of latent sentience or are governed by an advanced form of programming. This feature has led to countless arguments within the Adeptus Mechanicus, as some believe it reflects divine craftsmanship, while others see it as an affront to their doctrines of understanding through deconstruction. The gates are also deeply enigmatic in their relationship to psychic energy. Unlike most warp-related artifacts, which either amplify or consume psychic power indiscriminately, the gates appear to selectively resonate with specific frequencies or patterns of psychic activity. Psychers who approach active gates often report hearing whispers or seeing visions, but these experiences vary wildly, even among those exposed to the same gate. Some theorize that the gates act as amplifiers or conduits for particular psychic signals, possibly serving as a communication network for their creators. Others believe these phenomena are side effects of their ancient purpose, remnants of a design too advanced to comprehend. One of the most contested mysteries surrounding the gates is the presence of inscriptions and symbols on their surfaces. These markings are remarkably uniform across gates found in disparate regions of the galaxy, suggesting a centralized origin or guiding principle behind their construction. Attempts to decipher these symbols have yielded little beyond vague correlations to known warp phenomena. Some scholars speculate that these inscriptions are not written language, but a form of multi-dimensional coding, accessible only through advanced psychic or technological means. This idea has fueled countless experiments, though most have ended in failure or disaster. Perhaps the most controversial topic among fans and scholars alike is the question of whether the gates were ever meant to be opened by the species that now inhabit the galaxy. Many believe the gates' creators designed them with safeguards to prevent misuse, implying that their activation by modern factions could lead to catastrophic consequences. This perspective has led to speculation about keys or access protocols embedded within the gates, with some theorizing that these might be genetic, psychic, or even tied to long-lost artifacts scattered across the galaxy. Another point of fascination lies in the spatial alignment of the gates. Researchers have noted that many gates are positioned in a manner that suggests a deliberate pattern, potentially tied to celestial phenomena or galactic geography. Some believe the gates form a larger network of interconnected nodes, enabling instantaneous travel across vast distances. However, this network seems incomplete or damaged, with many gates failing to link properly or leading to dangerous and unpredictable locations within the warp. This alignment has prompted further study, as unlocking the full potential of this network could redefine interstellar travel and strategy. Lastly, the gate's ability to interact with non-psychic entities has sparked intense curiosity. Unlike most warp-related artifacts, which are hostile or lethal to non-psychic beings, the gates exhibit a degree of neutrality. Non-psychic individuals can approach and even interact with dormant gates without immediate harm, though prolonged exposure often results in subtle behavioral changes. This suggests that the gates were designed for use by a wide range of beings, not limited to psychically attuned species, further deepening the mystery of their creators' intentions. The ancient warp gates remain a focal point of intrigue, their unique features raising as many questions as they answer. As debates continue within both the Warhammer community and the galaxy's factions, these constructs stand as a testament to a forgotten era of unparalleled ambition and complexity. Their secrets, still largely hidden, promise to fuel exploration, conflict, and speculation for millennia to come. Throughout the history of the ancient warp gates, several remarkable individuals have left an indelible mark on their exploration, manipulation, or protection. These figures, driven by diverse motivations and wielding unique skills, have shaped the understanding and use of these enigmatic constructs. Their qualities, ambitions, and flaws underscore the complexity of the Warp Gate's legacy. Among the most notable figures in the exploration of the Warp Gates is Magos Explorator Xeltran Cord. A visionary within the Adeptus Mechanicus, Cord dedicated his life to uncovering the mysteries of the gates. Unlike many of his peers who viewed the gates with reverence or fear, Cord approached them as a puzzle to be solved. His brilliance in xenotechnology and warp theory enabled him to activate several dormant gates, though his methods were often unorthodox and fraught with risk. Cord's strength lay in his insatiable curiosity and ability to synthesize disparate fields of knowledge, but his weakness was his disregard for caution. His experiments frequently resulted in catastrophic consequences, including the accidental destabilization of a gate that led to the loss of an entire Forge world. Despite these setbacks, his findings laid the foundation for much of the Imperium's limited understanding of the gates. Another pivotal figure is Farseer Idraniel of Craftworld Ibresel, a powerful Aldari seer whose visions frequently revolved around the ancient warp gates. Idraniel believed the gates were key to reversing the Aldari's decline and sought to preserve or reclaim them from other factions. Her psychic prowess and deep understanding of the webway allowed her to navigate the dangers associated with the gates, but her methods often alienated allies. She was known for her uncompromising focus on her visions, which some interpreted as arrogance or recklessness. Idraniel's strength was her unwavering resolve and ability to predict the movements of her enemies, but her weakness was her inability to adapt when events defied her foresight. Her fate remains a mystery, with some believing she was lost in an attempt to access a particularly ancient and powerful gate. On the opposite end of the spectrum is the notorious rogue trader Phasander Drake, whose exploits around the warp gates earned him both fame and infamy. Unlike Cord or Idraniel, Drake approached the gates as opportunities for wealth and power. His charm and cunning enabled him to assemble a crew willing to take immense risks, often engaging in illegal or morally dubious activities to exploit the gate's potential. Drake's strength was his adaptability and ability to think on his feet, but his greed often blinded him to the larger consequences of his actions. One of his most infamous ventures involved using a gate to smuggle forbidden artifacts, inadvertently unleashing a minor warp incursion that devastated a nearby colony. Despite his misdeeds, Drake's accounts of his experiences remain a valuable, if unreliable, source of information on the gates. Within the ranks of the Imperium's Inquisition, Inquisitor Jaren Thel's name is often associated with the Warp Gates. A specialist in warp phenomena and Xenos artifacts, Thel was both a scholar and a warrior, feared for his relentless pursuit of knowledge and his ability to neutralize threats tied to the Immaterium. His strength lay in his discipline and methodical approach, which enabled him to unravel some of the Gate's more dangerous secrets. However, Thel's weakness was his growing obsession with the Gates, which led him to make increasingly questionable decisions. His peers grew suspicious of his motives, particularly after he disappeared while investigating a gate rumored to connect to an ancient repository of forbidden knowledge. Some speculate he fell victim to the Warp's influence, while others believe he willingly entered the Immaterium in pursuit of answers. A more obscure yet fascinating figure is Karnath Vir, a renegade Necron cryptech who viewed the Gates as an affront to Necron supremacy. Unlike most of his kind, who sought to destroy or neutralize the Gates, Vir believed they could be repurposed to serve the Necron dynasties. His expertise in manipulating dimensional energy allowed him to temporarily hijack a Gate's function, redirecting its connection to a Necron tomb world. Vir's strength was his ingenuity and willingness to defy convention, but his arrogance proved to be his downfall. He underestimated the chaotic nature of the Gates and was ultimately consumed by a malfunctioning Gates collapse, leaving behind fragments of his research that continue to intrigue and perplex scholars. Finally, there is the enigmatic figure known only as the Masked Archivist, a shadowy individual who appears in various records tied to the Warp Gates. The Archivist's true identity and allegiance remain unknown, but their presence is often linked to the dissemination of cryptic information about the Gates. Some believe the Archivist is a rogue AEI, while others suspect they are a psyker with unparalleled insight into the Immaterium. Their strength lies in their ability to manipulate events from the shadows, ensuring the Gates remain active topics of interest and study. However, their true motives are unclear, and their cryptic nature has led to as much confusion as enlightenment. These individuals, each with their own motivations and flaws, highlight the multifaceted nature of the Warp Gate's influence. Their actions have shaped the perception and utilization of these constructs, leaving a legacy that continues to ripple across the galaxy. Whether as heroes, villains, or something in between, their stories are inseparable from the mysteries of the Gates. The ancient Warp Gates are surrounded by unanswered questions and speculative theories, each contributing to their enduring mystery. These unresolved elements continue to fuel debates among scholars, enthusiasts, and the factions vying to control the Gates. Their enigmatic nature ensures that even the most advanced research has only scratched the surface of their true purpose and capabilities. One of the most contentious questions is the identity of their original creators. While the old ones are often credited with their construction, there is no definitive proof to confirm this. Some scholars argue that the Gates exhibit characteristics that surpass even the old ones' known technological and psychic capabilities. This has led to speculation that the Gates may predate them, potentially created by an even older and completely unknown race. Others theorize that the Gates were a collaborative effort involving multiple ancient civilizations, which could explain their varying designs and levels of sophistication. Another major mystery concerns the ultimate purpose of the Gates. Were they merely tools for transportation and communication, or did they serve a far more significant role in shaping the galaxy? Some believe the Gates were part of a grand design to regulate the warp, stabilizing its chaotic energies to make interstellar travel safer. Others suggest they were weapons, capable of unleashing targeted warp storms or collapsing entire star systems. There is even a theory that the Gates were meant to serve as containment mechanisms, locking away something far more dangerous than the Chaos Gods themselves, an ancient threat yet to be rediscovered. The role of the Gates in the rise and fall of galactic civilizations is another area of intense speculation. Some believe the Gates played a direct role in the collapse of the Old One's empire, with their destabilization marking the turning point in their war against the Necrons. Others suggest the gates were integral to the expansion of other now extinct civilizations, acting as lifelines for empires whose territories spanned vast regions of space. If this is true, it raises the question of whether the gates were designed to be abandoned or if their creators intended them to remain operational indefinitely. The phenomenon of selective activation remains one of the most perplexing aspects of the gates. While many appear dormant, others spontaneously activate without external interference. Some theorists argue that the gates are responding to specific galactic conditions, such as shifts in warp energy or the alignment of celestial bodies. Others believe the gates are listening for particular signals, psychic patterns, genetic markers, or even long-forgotten codes embedded in ancient artifacts. If this is true, it implies the gates have a level of autonomy or latent intelligence that has yet to be understood. A more speculative and controversial theory involves the gates' potential connection to the webway. While the Eldari have long believed the gates to be extensions of their own network, some evidence suggests the gates predate the webway entirely. This has led to the hypothesis that the webway itself may have been adapted from the gates' technology, raising uncomfortable questions about the origins of the Eldari's most sacred system. If the webway and the gates are interconnected, it could explain some of the anomalies observed within both, such as regions of the webway destabilizing when certain gates are tampered with. Another unresolved question is the nature of the energy that powers the gates. Despite extensive study, no faction has been able to replicate the mechanisms that sustain their functionality. Theories range from exotic warp-based power sources to entirely unknown forms of energy. Some suggest the gates are self-sustaining, drawing power from the immaterium or the fabric of space-time itself. Others believe the gates are symbiotic constructs, dependent on the life force or psychic activity of nearby populations to remain active. Finally, the gate's influence on living beings is a subject of ongoing debate. Psychers often report hearing voices or seeing visions when near active gates, but even non-psychic individuals have been affected, experiencing hallucinations, irrational behaviors, or sudden bursts of insight. This has led to the theory that the gates may be broadcasting information or signals at a subconscious level, influencing those within their proximity. If true, it raises concerns about the gate's ability to manipulate or control individuals without their awareness. These unresolved questions ensure the warp gates remain a source of endless fascination and dread. Their secrets are as vast as the galaxy itself, with each revelation only deepening the mystery. Whether they hold the key to untapped potential or an impending disaster, their legacy continues to shape the narrative of the Warhammer 40,000 universe in profound and unpredictable ways. The long-term consequences of the ancient warp gates extend far beyond their immediate effects, carrying profound implications for the galaxy's future. These constructs, ancient and powerful, represent both extraordinary potential and existential threats. Their continued presence and gradual rediscovery could lead to transformative changes for all factions, altering the very fabric of galactic civilization. One of the most significant long-term impacts of the warp gates is their potential to revolutionize interstellar travel and logistics. If fully understood and harnessed, the gates could render conventional warp travel obsolete, eliminating the inherent dangers of navigating the immaterium. This advancement could unify distant regions of the galaxy, allowing for faster movement of resources, populations, and military forces. However, such a development could also concentrate power in the hands of those who control the gates, creating new centers of dominance and intensifying conflicts as factions vie for control over these invaluable assets. The gates also have the potential to dramatically shift the balance of power among the galaxy's factions. For the Imperium of Man, the gates could serve as a vital tool in consolidating their fragmented empire, reconnecting isolated systems and reinforcing beleaguered regions. For the Eldari, the gates may represent a chance to restore their once great civilization, potentially integrating them into the remnants of their webway. Conversely, for the Necrons and other factions with opposing goals, the gates could become targets for neutralization or tools for strategic manipulation. These dynamics could lead to a galaxy-wide escalation of conflicts, as every faction seeks to secure or deny access to the gates. Another long-term consequence lies in the gate's capacity to influence the warp itself. If the gates were originally designed to stabilize or manipulate the immaterium, their reactivation on a large scale could have profound effects on warp phenomena. Entire sectors might experience reduced warp storms, making travel and communication more reliable. Alternatively, improper or malicious use of the gates could destabilize the warp further, creating more frequent and intense incursions. The consequences of such changes would ripple across the galaxy, altering everything from trade routes to the survival of frontier worlds. The gate's influence on technology and knowledge is another critical factor. Every new discovery tied to these constructs introduces fragments of forgotten knowledge, much of it far beyond the understanding of current civilizations. These revelations could spark technological revolutions, unlocking advancements in energy production, materials science, or even medicine. However, such progress comes with risks, as factions may misuse or weaponize these technologies, potentially unleashing new horrors. Additionally, the pursuit of this knowledge often comes at a high cost, as many who delve too deeply into the gate's secrets succumb to corruption, madness, or destruction. The psychological and cultural impact of the gates cannot be understated. As symbols of ancient power and mystery, they influence the beliefs and behaviors of those who encounter them. For some, the gates are seen as divine artifacts, reinforcing religious doctrines or sparking new cults devoted to their veneration. For others, they are ominous reminders of a galaxy-wide struggle that transcends individual factions, emphasizing the fragility of all civilizations. These divergent interpretations could lead to ideological conflicts, with factions clashing over the gate's significance and proper use. On a broader scale, the gates may play a role in shaping the evolution of the galaxy's species. Their connection to the warp and psychic phenomena could influence genetic or psychic development over time, especially for those who live in proximity to active gates. These changes could lead to the emergence of new abilities or adaptations, potentially giving rise to entirely new forms of life or altering the course of existing civilizations. While some might see this as a path to greater strength or understanding, others would view it as a threat to the purity or stability of their kind. Finally, the gate's long-term significance lies in their ability to alter the galaxy's narrative of progress and decline. If they are harnessed responsibly, they could usher in an era of unprecedented collaboration and unity, allowing disparate factions to coexist and share in the benefits of their rediscovery. Conversely, if the gates become instruments of greed, destruction, or manipulation, they could accelerate the galaxy's descent into chaos, exacerbating divisions and conflicts until no civilization is left unscathed. The ancient warp gates stand as a crossroads for the galaxy's future. Their secrets offer the potential for unparalleled advancement, but they also carry risks that could lead to catastrophic consequences. The choices made by those who uncover and control these constructs will determine whether they become tools of salvation or harbingers of destruction, ensuring that their legacy will continue to shape the galaxy for millennia to come.